So let's talk about video gaming inside The Sims 4. Kind of sounds a bit peculiar about playing a game inside of a game. Of course, in The Sims, video gaming is considered a skill that we learn, and we have come a long way on that in the real world as well, with fine motor skill development, and it helps with your cognitive reasoning, but my parents wouldn't believe that. How about yours? Would you think your parents would believe that? Well, there are a number of different ways you can play video games in The Sims 4. You can play a game on your phone if you have a computer, you can play a number of different games on the computer, and then you have to purchase some what we in the real world would call some bigger ticket items after that, such as the motion gaming mat. It's a couple of different versions, which come in two types, yeah. And of course you could also get that big computer arcade machine with 4 people can play at once, and as well as your game consoles too, Now, let's take a look at some of the actual games you can play on each of these. When I say play, that's kind of a stretch a little bit too. The phone seems to only display Blick Block and just a single screen. There's no movement of any of the blocks. But you can go to town on that phone screen like your life depended upon it, and often display some rather interesting body contortions while doing it. But you're never going to change that screen. Blick Block is a nod to the famous video game that we refer to in the real world as Tetris. But most of you probably already knew that. But, we had to start somewhere, didn't we? Let's move on to the computer. Of course, Blick Block is also available on the computer, though at least on the computer version you get some action. You get to see some of the blocks moving, much more reminiscent of the Tetris game as common patterns are formed that are removed just like in the Tetris game. The next game on the list, in no particular order, is the game Hillock 2. I do not know where Hillock 1 is. Seems kind of odd, but, these people at EA do odd things, so we get to go right to Hillock 2, which happens to be a much more modern-looking version of the old arcade game Missile Attack. That was out back in the days when Asteroids first came out. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, then we will just move along then. That brings us to Incredible Sports, which is pretty straightforward as it's just what it appears to be, a soccer video game. Nothing too crazy going on here. It would have been nice if it even looked like he was controlling something, but hey, you can't ask that much from a video game inside a video game, so all we can do is kind of watch the play. This brings us to play My Sims Go. This one is another pretty straightforward, at least I thought maybe. You might think it's something different, but I see it as a nod to the whole Tomb Raider game series, that typical archaeologist adventure movie. If you think it's something different, just leave us a note in the comments, because we'd like to hear what you think too. Then we have the game Road Rival Alpha, which can only be one thing in my mind anyway. This has to be a tribute to Tekken. There were a few other games that followed this same design, but I think Tekken was the biggest, so. Then we have the next game on the computer, and that is Sims Forever, which is a very nice and interesting version of The Sims for The Sims. So if the real world turns out to be a simulation, like The Matrix, that would mean someone is playing us, and in turn we are playing the Sims that are playing The Sims. I'm not sure if that's trippy or creepy, but it's something, I'll tell you. After that, we have this game called REFUGE. It's written out like an acronym. It's the next game, and though they spell it out that way, I couldn't figure out what each letter would actually stand for, but together they spell refugee. But Refugee is a nod to another very well-known game, and that is Elder Scrolls, which has been around for quite some time and is still very active in bringing new content to that game. Of course, if you need to touch it back to a Sims thing, it's similar to Sims Medieval too, but I'm going to go with Elder Scrolls. And now the last game on the computer that's available, per the menu, is Sim Scuffle, which surprisingly looks exactly like Hillock 2. Not really sure why that is, but I even went down to the library computer and played it there, and it was the same exact thing, and it always showed the same video on the screen regardless of me playing Sim Scuffle or Hillock 2. I'm not sure why they would even bother, or maybe it's something that will mysteriously change on some Tuesday patch. I guess we will have to wait and see, but for now, SIMshuffle is the same as the old arcade game Missile Command. Now we get to the motion gaming mats. Boy, I guess the closest thing we have to these would be the virtual reality headsets, which would give you a similar experience, kind of like the Oculus. First up is a big Sims favorite, Blick Block. Imagine that. Which in this version is by far more interesting than all the others. Think of Tetris, but 3D. Lots of interesting things to watch while playing this one. Incredible Sports is up next. As a game on the gaming mat, it doesn't really look like a sport, though you will recognize many of the items that are getting tossed around, like soccer balls and footballs. And though there is the baseball bat swing, much of the movements seem to be very much like the Blick Block movements, but still an interesting idea and a nod to the great sport video games that came in the past. Maniac Match'ems is a new choice that is only on the gaming mats, and it looks to me very much like Candy Crush type of games where you match sets and they disappear. Of course, there are so many of those types of games out on Facebook and other social media platforms. Candy Crush was the one that came to my mind. Last on the gaming mats is Refugee. Again, but this time it's very much a 3D, as if you were going through like a dungeon and fighting some unseen enemy. It definitely has a Dungeons & Dragons type feel to it, and though I think they could have made the tunnel effect wider so it covers more area, but hey, that is just me. But still a nod to Elder Scrolls, or if you're concentrating on trying to keep it in the Sims world, Sims Medieval, and that type of game. Now we have gaming consoles like PlayStation and Xbox, so of course we have gaming consoles in The Sims as well, and we even have some new games for these. Are you ready? Well, let's go. First up is Party Frenzy. This is a 4-player game. This one is a competition. Like I said, it had 4 players in it. First up is bowling, and then on to shooting baskets, and finally hitting a golf ball. This sort of reminds me of some of the games that we would play on Nintendo Wii. I can't find anything to back that up, but that's the impression I get. Also available on the console is My Sims Racing, which made me immediately think of Mario Kart Racing. Has the same kind of look to it. I'm sure there are some other ones that would fit the bill as well, probably some Lego racing game or a Sonic Hedgehog racing game or some other character, but it's definitely one of those types of games. That brings us to our next video game on the console, and that is Density Effect, which from everything I could find online was a surefire nod to the video game franchise Mass Effect, which has a similar storyline look to it. Let me know if you find something different. I'm always looking for new insights into the games. Finally, you have Genie's Curse, which was a hard one at first to find. It had the look of a lot of video games, like Zelda came to mind immediately, but from what I was able to find, this is actually a nod to the Sims 3 World Adventures. What do you think? Do you think it reminds you of Sims 3 World Adventures or some other game like Zelda? Now, if you earn a lot of money or utilize the money cheat, you can buy one of those big arcade machines for 4 players, and you can play the game in which has to be a nod to Galaga. I mean, the aliens look very close to the ones in Galaga, and they move that way. I think it's kind of funny, though, that no aliens are injured in this game, and no spaceships actually get hit by either side firing their weapons. Must just be a sim thing. Well, that wraps up this video. I hope you enjoyed it and felt entertained, or who knows, maybe you learned something you didn't know. Either way, hit that like button and subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next SIMsational video. Bye for now.